Governor Healey is taking action to shield Massachusetts residents who may be in the country illegally from immigration and customs enforcement operations.
Today, she proposed legislation and signed an executive order to limit where ICE agents can operate. That brings us over to Western Mass News reporter Addie Patterson. She's live in studio with more on the governor's announcement. Addie.
That's right, Chris and Amanda. The proposed bill also stops other states from sending their National Guard here to Massachusetts without the governor's approval. State officials calling it the most comprehensive effort in the country to protect sensitive locations from federal immigration enforcement. The proposed legislation would keep ICE agents completely out of courthouses, schools, hospitals, child care facilities, and places of worship. The governor also signing an executive order prohibiting Massachusetts from making any new deals with ICE unless there's a real public safety reason to do it. It bans ICE from making arrests in non-public areas of the state facilities, and it prevents the state from allowing ICE to use state property as a staging ground for immigration enforcement operations.
Hospitals, healthcare centers, doctors' offices are seeing people skip medical appointments, skip needed care, pregnant women not going to the doctors, not taking their kids for pediatrician visits, not going to the doctors when they're actually really in need of emergent care. Why? Because they're afraid of ICE. We have people who are afraid to visit their parents in a nursing home because of ICE. That's just wrong. And we're going to stop that here in Massachusetts.
The bill would also give parents a way to set up guardianship for their kids ahead of time in case they're detained or deported. A vigil for Alex Preddy, a nurse who was shot by ICE this past weekend, is being held tonight in Northampton. And coming up later tonight on Western Mass News at 10 and 11, we'll have more on how he's being remembered locally, as well as more on this new legislation. For now, reporting live in studio, Addie Patterson, Western Mass News.